Hello and welcome to another Blood and Pigment ship review. Today we're here talking about the 6th Rate Frigate. I am Joseph.
I am Guy.
And I'm Dan. The glorious 6th-rate frigate is a 26-gun warship and costs 25 glorious points.
The frigate's max speed is 5 inches, has 5 sail settings, 5 inches, 4, 3, 2, and 0. Its windward value is -2, has a turn value of 3, and these are all the same stats as you'll find in the light frigate.
The 6th-rate frigate, or just frigate, has a hull fortitude of 5 and a hull integrity of 6. It takes 28 hits to drop the ship to 1 fortitude. The rigging on the 6th-rate frigate has a fortitude 4 and integrity 6, and its draft value is 9.
Frigate is a 4-deck ship. The forecastle can hold 16 models and 2 Bowchasers. The main deck can hold 31 models with 6 light cannons, or 35 models without cannons. The quarterdeck can hold 31 models with 2 light cannons, and the poop deck can hold 14 models and 2 light cannons. This ship has 3 fighting top subsections that can hold 4 models each.
The frigate's forecastle can be armed with 4 cannons, 2 forward-facing light chasers, and 4 swivel guns. The main deck can be armed with 6 cannons. The quarterdeck can be also armed with 6 cannons, but 2 of them have to be light on the deck, along with 2 swivels. The poop deck can be armed with 2 cannons and 2 light deck cannons again, and 2 swivel guns, along with 2 rear-facing chasers. This is like the most complicated cannon setup in the game.
A lot of cannons. In addition to its fighting tops, the frigate has chasers, staysails, limited capacity, and duck guns.
The frigate has 3 glorious upgrades. You can get Sweeps 2, the Almighty Wheel, all hail the wheel, and Bowchasers.
Joseph, you mentioned that this is a pretty complicated ship. Let's go over that.
Limited capacity, so it's pretty limited as far as heavies, and it becomes kind of unwieldy.
Yeah, so it slows you down. Losing that 5-inch move does really hurt the frigate.
Turns it into a long flute.
Yeah, and compared to the galleon can take heavy cannon forward-facing chasers.
Yeah.
Whereas the other rule that kind of complicates the cannon placement on this is deck guns. This ship has 6 spots for deck guns. The deck guns are the 2 forward-facing chasers and the quarter decks, 2 rounded cannon ports at the very top, and the poop decks rounded cannon ports that are at the very top. These gun places can only have light cannons. So even if this interacts with the Bowchasers upgrade, where you can have your swivel guns in the front to have 2 forward-facing chasers, but they have to be light cannons.
When I'm using the force builder to try to make a force with a 6th-rate frigate, it always intimidates me because I have to keep checking the gun setup and decide which cannons I want to put, if the little light ones are worth it or not. I always have to spend extra 5 minutes just figuring out how to equip my ship when I use this ship in the force builder.
Yeah, I have to write it down on like a little 3x5 card. Like, okay, where am I gonna? What cannons am I gonna arm? How many swivels am I gonna do? And this is actually Bowchasers on this are kind of exciting because you can pay 5 points for those 2 forward-facing cannons. It's not actually a bad upgrade compared to losing the 2 swivels. I would say that the swivels, it's 3 points cheaper. I would say that the swivels are going to be more useful if you're running this as a gunship because we've talked before, throwing 12 dice is really good. You know, it's still good. But paying 5 points for 2 cannons that are pointed forward, especially if you want to do boarding or some sort of like shock and awe ship thing with a 6-rate, I would say go for it.
I will say that due to the complicated nature, when the ship first came out, I was in very close correspondence with Mike about it because I was concerned that the galleon seemed to be really awesome, but they really took my baby and kind of neutered it. But after talking to him, the reason why these rules are in place is because historically these weren't meant to be really big gunships. They often carried, I don't know what poundage he said they were, but they mostly carry what we would call medium guns. And the way a ship is set up is typically you have lighter cannons on top, so it doesn't affect your ballast and how well the ship rides in the water. So this is a weird thing where it's a lot of like cool like historical rules, but they're also very limiting compared to, again, the galleon, which you can just load up with heavy guns.
So this is your baby. Why don't you sell us on it? What do you love about this ship?
So this is a very meme-worthy ship. I once took a list of 200 points. I crammed as many sailors as I could cram on there with no pistols, no upgrades at all, and just filled it up with light cannons for a 200-point game. And my buddy showed up with a sloop of war with medium cannons, and I blew him out of the water by turn 4 with basically two decks firing just about every turn. I think I was running Dutch privateers, so I was just running pure Leiden and focusing on just cannons. He kept trying to board, but his crew kept getting shaken by the sheer amount of cannon dice that I was throwing at him, and it worked really well. As far as fighting galleon on galleon versus 6 rate, I've done that too, and because of how long it is, if you roll or do the encounter where you're sailing at each other, you could probably board by turn 2. Because you're just so long, you'll get there first, and if you got really solid dice rolls, you can grapple and render all those galleons' guns useless as you grapple and start hopping over and chopping heads. It sails really well, it handles really well, the wheel is a definite upgrade to those hilarious sailing tests, but the only downside, which I will concur, is the weird place of the guns, and that the very, very far rear deck seems really underarmed compared to the rest of them, and you have to have units back there to steer the ship.
I thought this was only good things that you were going to be mentioning.
I have to be fair. I have to
Sell
be fair and objective.
Sell it.
But I love it. It's a beautiful model. I went to Hobby Lobby and grabbed it was Michael's. I apologize. It was Michael's. That's what's near me. And got a little octopus figurehead. And I had my brother carve off the lion because I didn't want that. And we glued on the little plastic octopus as the figurehead. And I call it the devilfish. And it looks great. There's pictures of it on the blog. You should go check it out.
It's a great model. It's really pretty, really fun to paint.
Gorgeous.
Really ornate.
It's gorgeous.
And long. Really big.
A lot of fun to paint too. I saw the lion off mine too. Not because I don't like lions, but because I already had one on my galleon. So it's like, why do I need two? So I put a lady up there.
Oh, and the two little saints that come with the galleon, the two little saints go on the back. Because Tyler didn't use that, he glued those on the back of my 6-rate in the corners and painted them up, so it also looks really cool. It's a lot of, if you like customizing, there's lots of room for you to add your own little bits and baubles in there if you want, which I really do appreciate. The obviously resin to plastic makes it a little iffy, but if you know what you're doing as far as hobbying goes, you can kit this thing out, make it like a glorious, glorious flagship.
Yeah, if you have some filler or green stuff, you can easily make it look good. This is the biggest warship in Blood and Plunder right now. And it's actually rated. It's a 6-rate gunship. It's really exciting.
The galleon is definitely can hit harder. You can load it up heavier with bigger guns, but this one's much more nimble and feels more aggressive than the galleon.
For the upcoming Raise the Black expansion, we do know that there will be a Queen Anne's Revenge ship option for the 6-rate that you will obviously have to use Blackbeard for. As far as the specifics, they're still a bit iffy because obviously it's still in development, but once we do have the specifics and it comes out, you can bet your bucket I will be doing an article on it, and we will definitely be covering a video. We even got to twist my other two co-hosts here arms to do it. But we will.
That'll be fun. Yeah, it represents his ship really well. Blackbeard's ship.
It'll be a lot of fun when it comes out. But I want to touch on something, Dan, that you mentioned, which was kind of the weaknesses that the 6-rate frigate has. Specifically that poop deck.
Yeah, it's kind of undergunned.
And you have to put models there too to steer your ship.
Yeah, you don't have the whipstaff.
Now it does have a lot going on for it for calling it undergunned. It has 2 cannon ports, or 1 on each side, and has a deck gun, which has to be light, and has 2 swivels there. But it only has space for 14 models. If you're doing all medium guns and you don't want to accrue those light cannon on the deck, then that's just 1 cannon on that deck. If you just want to put crew there to man the swivels and you want to ignore the cannons, then that's only 6 dice that you're throwing with a swivel gun shot. If you want to put musketeers there, then it's 14 models is a lot of models for musketeers, but it becomes a weak point most of the time. And I've had problems when I am steering the ship around that it's hard to have all of your guns come to bear on a smaller target reliably. I can usually, if I'm trying to do a broadside, I can get two decks or maybe 3 decks to hit a target, but never 4 of them.
It is a very long ship, but there is that trick you figured out where if you're doing a commander's broadside action, you can trigger 2,
You can move
3
in
of
the
the
middle.
decks, and then you can move and shoot the 3rd or 4th deck, and then they all still count as 1 attack, even though you've moved in between, which is super funky. But that is one way to make use of a long ship like that.
It is, but even doing that trick, which again is just following the rules, because the broadside says all dice fired count as 1 during his activation counts as 1 attack. Even doing that trick, it is against a 2-deck ship, or sometimes even a 3-deck ship that's at a little bit of a perpendicular angle to you, where it's not a raking shot, but they're coming straight for you. It's hard to get all 3 decks to hit a meaningful target. I remember I even had to have my shot hit a part of your flute that you had unmanned.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, where it's like, well, I can't shoot at anything else that's meaningful, so I will go after this unmanned deck you have.
Shoot the wood, that helps.
Yeah.
And that touches on something, a thought I've had a couple times. I was building a 6th rate list, and then I at a reasonable point level between 200, 300, 350. Sometimes you don't need that 4th deck. A light frigate does all the same things just as well for a lot of lists. This is a really good ship for a high point level for big battles, but in the medium standard range, it's just not necessary unless you want to do the crazy 200 point 22 cannon list that Dan loves, which sounds really fun. I just made it online here. You can do 32 sailors. That's enough to reload all your cannons, 22 cannons, and an untested commander for 198 points.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Or if you want to be cheeky, I have also taken, just the I think I took the 3 heavy guns on 1 deck and just gave it the 3 heavy guns. And in a small game, heavy guns decimate. I was trying to figure out all the ways I can use a 6 rate, and some of it is borderline diabolical, and you should never do it if you like having people to play with.
That 6th rate gun, let's touch on that for a second. I think it's a bit of a trap. I did it a couple times, and I don't think I'll do it again just because it makes the ship so unwieldy. Although I really want to, because it's the only ship that you can actually use this heavy cannon models on, because the galleon, you have all closed decks. So it's so cool to see those heavy cannons on there.
Yeah, on a ship, you can use them on fortifications and have.
Yeah.
So there's that. The stone tower fort, the gun fortification, or the gun emplacement, and even the bastions can take heavy cannons. So yeah, you can use them out in the open with the ship. You won that game, though, that you used the heavy cannons on.
I did, but it wasn't because of heavy cannons.
No.
And that's such another upgrade. The wheel is amazing in this.
Oh,
we're starting to look at the late 17th, early 18th century. The wheel, it's a subtle thing. Like many Blood and Plunder rules, you get a bonus on your sailing maneuvers, advanced maneuvers. But if you couple that with another expert sailors or sailing master, you can tack with impunity. We played, which scenario was that? The escort, where I was in 6th rate, you were in a light frigate. I had to go upwind across the board, and I just pretty much tacked back and forth across the eye of the wind all game.
The whole game.
With this wheel and the sailing master, and just sailed up with. Yeah, it was insane.
Or, I came in at the wrong angle and had to do a donut to bring my. I thought, I'll bring my other guns on the other side to bear. It took too long, and by the time I was actually in position to shoot, you had already crossed the whole board. That's another advantage, though, of this ship is so long. If any rule that says that you have to have a portion of the ship within 2 inches of an edge, your ship is so far into the game by that point that if you have to get somewhere, I mean, I think you won on turn 2 on that game.
I think it was 3 or 4, but
turn
you
three.
have like
I think it was
turn
turn
or
3.
two advantage just because of the length of the beast.
Yeah, and you were so far forward. So it also works if you have a scenario where you deploy the ship on a turn later than one, or after the game has started, you would deploy the ship. It jumps forward so much
It's
that
like a 18 or 20-inch move on the first.
on the first before at the sound of the word go, it's just 20 inches forward.
There'd be like a tsunami on the shore if there was. It's an amphibious game as the ship.
It launches forward. So, and that's good if you want to run this as like a couple light cannons and mainly to board, or as to threaten boarding at least, because this ship also has those 4 swivels in the front, which are great softening, or two forward-facing chasers that you can launch at the opponent.
Yeah, this is an aggressive ship. It's very flexible. Has a lot of different options for cannons. You can put a ton of cannons on it. You can put heavy cannons on it. You can put forward chasers, backward chasers. You can put swivels on it.
Yeah,
it's just
so complicated.
But it's a lot of list building depth there. That's fun. But it is all for larger games, 200 plus. I wouldn't ever run this less than 200 points.
Yeah,
I probably, in most cases, would say 300 plus.
I'm not less than 400. I'm not going to run this ship because I have not had good luck.
I think there's a place for
so
the fun, just super cannon list. You can do 22 cannons at 200 points. That's impressive. But it is a fragile list because you can lose cannon crew pretty fast. I'd
much rather run medium guns with more crew, on a light frigate. Even on a sloop. Sloops, there's those 3 decks with 3 medium guns on it. That can be a killer in a game.
Yeah.
Although you wouldn't put a big dent in this. That's the other thing. It has exactly the same fortitude and integrity as a 6th rate. So you don't really gain any hit points or speed.
Oh, you mean a light frigate?
Yeah. Light and 6th are the same stats, basically. It's just bigger and more cannons. Which, light frigate is an awesome ship, so not bashing there. But it doesn't.
It was my favorite till this one came out.
It does put you at a disadvantage in higher point games against the Galleon, because they get to take as many heavy cannons as they want, and they have heavily built, and even their rigging I think has more points than you. So you have to, if you're up against a equally pointed Galleon, you have to decide your attack vector very carefully.
Because if you use of your maneuverability and speed.
Maneuverability and speed. Because if you just say, okay, I'm just gonna plot on next to them and we're gonna trade shot the whole game, you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah. They have whipstaff too, so the Galleon can ignore their kind of measly little one gun they have in the back too. Whereas you can't. You have to put a crew back
keep somebody back there.
Yeah. And they have gun decks too, so they're protected against muskets. You don't have gun decks on the 6th rate. All your units are going to be hit by muskets.
So good fun level, good power level. It is for bigger games, harder to use at lower point levels. It is $240 right now as of 2022. It's quite a bit less to buy than the Galleon, but it is quite a bit more than the light frigate. So if you're not interested in playing huge games, light frigate is probably a more flexible and affordable purchase. But if you want a substantial ship that really feels like you're sailing something and you want to play big games and you like cannons, I think this is a really, really good option.
Also, if you do any tabletop RPGs like D&D or Pathfinder, this also works really well if you're in a ship setting. All the Firelock ships do. But when I brought this baby out for my second session I was running, everybody was amazed at the ship that I had. It gets a lot of eye turners.
Oh, that's my standard operating procedure whenever I do demos, is to bring this ship because it looks impressive and people want to just like look at it. It's kind of weird seeing people like just stare like mouth agog at this big ship in front of them. I built mine mainly as like a display thing I can put in the house because you look at the $240 and it sounds like a lot, but as a hobby project, you only ever have to do once because who's going to run more than one of these? And you can have something in your house that's on display that visitors can go like, oh wow, that looks really cool, and you get to look at every day as a display object.
Mm-hmm.
I think $240 is a deal. It costs about a little bit more of that if you want to get a real model ship pre-built for you. So it's a deal, I think.
Yes, not a bad deal for how big it is and how well detailed and beautiful it is when you're done.
I actually sent a picture of my model to someone on Instagram who does commissions for ships. I sent him my model, and he actually drew up a whole ship, whole 9 yards, based off the model. So it is beautiful.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for us. For more Blood and Plunder ship overviews and a review by Dan on this ship specifically, you can go over to bloodandfigment.com and check out all the articles we have there. We have pages on ships and nations and factions and terrain building and painting guides and battle reports and all sorts of stuff. Go check it out there.
Check out the rest of our YouTube channel as well. We'll be aiming to put out a video every Monday. Subscribe and ring the ship's bell so you can stay notified of our uploads.
And as always, keep your dice ready to win at your back, yar har.